Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Film Frauds. Myself, Matt, and my co-hosts, Mark
Hello.
and Tyler,
Hello.
providing completely unprofessional, 100% biased opinions on the movies of today, tomorrow, and yesteryear. But this time, Mark is in the spotlight once again with his picks,
Finally.
doing his not director series. This is regular picks. Mark, what movie did you recommend us to watch this week?
I recommended Terrence Malick's directorial debut, Badlands, his 1973 film. It stars Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek as Holly and, oh my God, I can't remember what Martin Sheen's character's name is.
Kit. It's Kit.
Kit. I
Oh
knew
my
that.
God.
Wait,
The story.
I thought it was the kid.
No,
Kit.
they keep
Oh.
saying they keep putting a hard T, so it sounds like
Okay.
a kid.
It's sort of like a Bonnie and Clyde story. It's lovers on the run. It's loosely based off the real life murder spree of Charles Starkweather and his girlfriend Carol Ann Fugate in 1958, and it was my first time seeing a Terrence Malick film. I watched it for the first time 2 months ago, and it's sort of been on my mind ever since. I think about it like every once in a while since the first time I watched it, and it's the first time seeing it. I obviously fell in love with it. I knew a little bit about Terrence Malick going in, like his the way he shoots nature and like man's place in nature. That sort of piqued my interest, and that's sort of why I watched Badlands originally. And so loved it the first time. This time watching it, I watched it again yesterday and sort of today. And my love is just, increased tenfold. I think this is a film that benefits from a rewatch. I was definitely more aware of different aspects of the film. The first time watching it, I was more focused on the story itself. So Sissy Spacek as Holly narrating the story and her tale, her side of the story. That's what I was sort of invested in the first time around. And then the second time around, I was really focused on Kit. I really find him to be an absolutely incredible character because he's this young buck who, although he acts on impulse like 90% of the time, he also has these moments of like deep contemplation and solitude. And it's just these two very contrasting character aspects that I find extremely compelling. And so we can go into that later on, but that's sort of my introduction to the film. That's my history with the film. And I'm excited to see what you two think about it.
Yeah.
So
Matt, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll go. Also for uploading purposes, this is on the Criterion channel. So
all right.
Yeah, it's a Criterion movie.
Criterion.
Yep.
We have our legal excuse to do so.
Shout out to the Criterion subreddit for making me, suggesting this film.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you, Criterion subreddit.
Yeah. So this is my first Terrence Malick movie. And I would say that I really liked the first and last third of this movie a lot. I think his directing style I start to realize why he's like a known director, especially in the last third of the movie. I think he really comes into his own there. I would say the middle third, I was a little like kind of like, where's this going? But I would say so I saw this movie 2 days ago and it's still in my mind. I think that the character of Kit is very interesting. I think this tale is very simple, but like you can like extrapolate more complex themes out of it. And I would say I think this movie would definitely benefit more when I rewatch it because I definitely want to see it again. I would just say that you can tell from this movie that one, Martin Sheen is going to be a star, and two, Terrence Malick, you can see I think when I watch more of his movies later on in his career, I'll see that. I'll look back at this movie and say, oh, there's definitely potential here, but then later on, oh, this guy really came into his own as a worthy Criterion director. Tyler,
Yeah,
that's all I have to say about that.
I'm slightly in the middle of you two. I'm actually more interested in Malick as a figure than I think his movie itself, which is really weird. He is notoriously just not in the public eye at all. Yeah, he's a very elusive figure, akin to someone more like Daniel Day-Lewis, who rarely ever gives interviews, who just kind of disappears. I mean, I was reading up about him, and he is not given many interviews at all. It's actually very hard to find a lot about him. And when he makes a film, he writes in his contract that he can't be used for marketing purposes. So even I was like, oh, this is what Terrence Malick looks like. I was like, I had no idea. I'm in the same boat with you, Matt, where this is my first Terrence Malick movie. To me, he's one of those like elusive directors that I've always been meaning to watch. I'm like, oh man, I really want to watch like The Thin Red Line. I really want to watch Tree of Life. But I look at the run times, I'm like, man, they're 3 hours. I'll watch them another time, and then I just don't. And I'm very intrigued by this movie because I feel like this movie also prescribes a lot to like the iceberg theory perpetuated by Hemingway, where everything appears very like surface level, but there's a lot of like everything veers like very simple on a surface level, but underneath there's like layers and layers of backstory and different kind of analysis you can make of that. And I feel like I could talk about from like an analytical sense this movie like all day long.
Mhm.
On the surface, I think this movie is really good. I struggled with a few aspects of it. We'll get into more details of it. But I mean, in terms of like a directorial debut, have you seen a more like clearly defined style of what someone wants a movie to be than like Badlands? Like it's incredible
Right.
how like refined his directing already is in his
Yeah.
very first movie. And by all accounts, it only gets better.
hmm Yeah. And I'd like to talk about Terrence Malick just for a quick second. Now that we're on the topic, I also agree with you and Tyler. Like, I'm very interested in sort of his elusiveness with Malick. I think this. So the Thin Red Line was Malick's third film, and that was like 20 years after Days of Heaven, which came out in 1977 or something like that.
Yep.
So for 20 years, he just sort of goes off the grid. He makes two fantastic films in the 70s, and then he just sort of goes into hiding. And then he comes back, and even though I haven't seen The Thin Red Line, it's kind of established as like this sort of philosophical masterpiece. I mean, Roger Ebert and Scorsese, they love that film. It's one of their favorite films of the 90s. And it's very compelling. And I think, the through line with his movies is just man's place in nature, which I find to be a very compelling subject. And I also think it sort of enriches the films, his films, just, knowing so little about him. Like I think of the author Thomas Pynchon, who wrote, Inherent Vice, Gravity's Rainbow.
Yeah.
We hardly know anything about Thomas Pynchon. He's made like fantastic novel after fantastic novel, and he like doesn't do interviews, he doesn't do anything. He just literally he just writes these books in his house, publishes them, and like nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why people love, Thomas. One of the many reasons why people love Thomas Pynchon. And so yeah. So anyway, do you guys have any other thoughts on Terrence Malick before we get into critiques?
Like there's such a definite appeal of like the mysterious author that no one knows anything about. And I mean, I was reading up about him yesterday, and there is this big like gap. It's just like hiatus, 20 years. And it's just like a substantial 20 years. And I was trying to look up at what he was doing, and there isn't a lot. There's just like a little bit of like he was working on like secret projects, but no one knows what they are. And eventually they became like the Tree of Life in his I think his other movie Voyage of Time that came out that I haven't seen. But like we're all kind of like we all love books, clearly. And for me, he
Someone was
strikes
like
me.
buying them more than reading them.
Hey, listen, shut up. Hey, I hate you. But to me, he strikes me as someone who's like a very like transcendentalist director, or at least in this movie, there's a lot of like similarities with like transcendentalism. And if you don't know what
the
that
Emerson of the
he's the Emerson of the
director
film.
world.
But like basically, like if you transcendentalism is like the idea of like humans' place with nature, humans' relationship with nature, and like focusing on the individual. It's spun off of like the Romantic era in the like 19th century. It's a very popular literary era. And to me, I was reading this, I was like, this feels like a very transcendentalist like movie. Like Kit is like a very like internal character, has like his own like internal machinations that only slightly reveal himself. There's one thing that stands out when they slight spoilers. We'll get to I guess more spoilers, but when they're a little bit more famous and people are hunting them down, and he stops in that rich person's house and he tries to he goes on like the dictography, and he gives like these like he's like, and my point of life is, and he like makes his big speech, and it's the idea of like, oh, there's his internal machinations. He's someone who wants to be like recognized, and he thinks his words have meaning now because he's famous, when he's really just kind of like this like neurotic almost kind of figure. It's a very
impulsive. He's like a creature almost. He's like a an animal.
But is he
like
impulsive?
relying on instinct. He's I would say I'm thinking I'm in the middle between you guys. I'd say like a lot of what he does is somewhat like animalistic. Like, all right, we're in spoilers now, right?
Yeah, I have my own theories about what kind of person he is, but
So like I think him instinct. I think him killing Holly's father was like an instinct move.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna call the cops and he has no idea what to do. So I mean, like a logical person would like knock him out or something with the gun, but like he just shoots him because it's like sort of like his impulsive decision. But a lot of him is focused on his legacy. Like when he's in like the end, like towards the end, when he thinks he's going to get shot by the cops or something, he like checks his hair in the mirror while he's driving. It's like he wants, and then he also says like with Holly, he's like, I want a girl to scream my name when I'm dying, like when I'm getting shot and dying. So like it's like he cares a lot about like his legacy and how he's going to go out. I think that's interesting.
So this is where my theory comes in, that he's not necessarily impulsive, but rather he's someone who kills or takes out his frustrations and people who hamper his progress to success. It's the reason why when he doesn't ultimately kill the rich man and his maid in his house, he just locks them in a storage cabinet, is because that rich man is like representative of who he wants to be. Like he kills his garbage truck friend. He kills him. He kills people who impede on his potential to become someone famous. And then when he's in the presence of someone who's rich and successful, he doesn't kill them because he's in awe of them almost. He respects them too much to basically like just mindlessly kill them. He locks the people like in the little like bunker, and then he's like he shoots them twice, and then he's like, I think I got him, and runs away. And all these people are someone who he does not respect, but they run the potential to impede his forward progression. At least when I was watching it, that's what I saw. Like when he doesn't kill the rich man and his maid, I was like, that there's something there about like respect for the wealthy, so it's like his admiration for it, his desire. It's like there has to be something. Or I could be wrong.
That's a good point, but I disagree.
That's what we're here for.
I think that's my instinct now is to disagree with you. I had to really think about it, but I didn't get that impression when I first watched it. But I do think there's something to look into when what he does to that young couple and what he does to the maid and the rich man. He does the exact same thing, locks them in a room, but like he kills at least the young couple.
Yep.
And it's a good question of why, but I don't think the reason would be that he respects the rich man.
Respects what he stands for, though. He respects almost like the notoriety. I don't know. It's just like it's one of those things. Like he's in.
I don't get that. I mean, he was a garbage man, right? And remember when Holly says like, my dad wouldn't want me to hang out with you because you throw garbage, because he recognizes that the higher levels of society look down upon his work.
Yeah, but
wouldn't that be amplified against a rich man?
But there's
right?
also like the idea of like maybe some of his like desire for fame and notoriety comes from the fact he was a Korean War vet, and he wants to come back home to like, hey, I fought in a war, like everyone like respect me. Maybe I don't know, like a lot of this stuff is us just speculating because there really is not a lot given to like Kit outside of his actions and a minimal backstory. Maybe he wanted to come back. He's like, I fought in a war. It's just like a very interesting, like, and this is what I'm talking about with like the iceberg theory is really on a surface level, he's a garbage truck man. He's in his middle 20s. He fought in the Korean War, and that's about it. We don't know where he comes from. We don't know what his story is outside of that. And this is like the iceberg theory is we can only judge him off his actions, and his actions have so many different interpretations and different meanings and why, and you can speculate. That's what I kind of really like about this movie.
Yeah, right. That's I think why a rewatch is very beneficial. The Kit becomes the prime target of your attention, and I definitely think you can pull it, like, again, we keep saying the iceberg theory, but again, I think it's applicable here because you can pull so much meaning from such simple actions.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're sort of all over the place in our review, but this is contingent on what we're talking about right now. I think the first time he like really smiles is when the police officer says like, I'll kiss your ass if he doesn't look like James Dean. And he he has that smile on his face. He's like, yep, I've solidified myself. Yep. So obviously he's striving for fame. And that's sort of what he's sort of going for. That sort of symbolic
fame and like
immortality.
I would say fame and like a movie style like a movie like a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No. Keep going.
I was gonna say because the way he achieves fame, I view that as being like he sort of wants to live life like a James Dean action movie star kind of.
Yep.
And it's like the way he styling his hair that way as well.
The outfit.
Yeah. So I don't think it's just fame. I think like he's looking for like a very specific kind of fame. You know, like having the love story, having the action filled lifestyle. But you know, obviously it's in contrast like it's like a gritty real world where he's, you know, murdering people. Um, a lot of times in cold blood. So like there's that sort of delusion there as well, which you could maybe blame, which you could maybe like blame to his like PTSD, which he's suffering from, you know, fighting the Korean War, or just general frustration that a lot of veterans feel when they come home to the U.S. They don't feel like they're being treated the way they should be, because veterans during that time period are treated a lot differently than they are now. Not that things are great for them now, but especially like Vietnam, Korean War veterans, like a lot of like that was during the hippie movement as well. So people were kind of looking down upon the war because they saw like these wars against the communists as being kind of pointless. Instead of blaming like the generals and the government in power, they were blaming the soldiers for fighting. So I think a lot of that has to do with is influenced by his actions as well.
I also wonder if there's like a lot of like commentary on Malik on like the state of like popular culture and the state of like celebrities and their attempt to emulate the images and what people represent rather than who the people are. Like James Dean at the time represented like cool and suave, and they're just like this like kind of like bad boy figure, but we don't really know much about, or at least I personally don't know much about James Dean outside of that. And is this Malik like attempting to like make commentary about like our worshiping almost of like celebrity culture and celebrity figures and the image they represent? And is there almost like a commentary on like the what is the word when you desensitize?
Desensitizing.
Thank you. Desensitizing of violence, which we'll get more to with like the Sissy Spacek character, which I think is just like, again, there's so much to go here, and this is like a very fascinating movie.
I'm glad you, Tyler, I'm glad you really brought up the iceberg theory, because I'm now looking at this sort of like through like a Hemingway lens.
Yep.
And there's a lot of lines of dialogue that's very simple, and and you can pick them apart, like, because with Kit, everything it's like he's very simple and impulsive, but also deep contemplation, and so everything he says has a certain weight to it. And so a specific line of dialogue that I'm thinking of is when he's arrested by the police. He's sitting in the front of the car, police car, and the sheriff takes his hat and throws out the window, and then Kit says, "You threw my hat out the window." He just states that. You know, that's a very Hemingway line, you know, just because Hemingway was like, you know, write a true sentence. You know, that's a true statement. His hat was just thrown out the window. But like, why would Kit say that? He just states that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I should be picking any meaning out of that. Maybe just Malik just had that in there for the sake of it. But
Like
again, it's sort of like, why did Kit say that?
I would just for more proof of like his criticism of like worshiping a celebrity or like famous people. That's what we're talking about, right? That's what we're still on.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I sort of did. I had a bit of a segue, but let's go back to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like very briefly, like because we're all over the map, so I might as well just continue with this. But,
we'll come back. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to
because like towards the end when he's captured and he's like getting off the airplane and like he's throwing like his items at the police officers, like, hey, do you want this? Do you want that? Like they're all so friendly to him. Like they're shaking his hand. They're like, oh, nice to meet you. So like in a way, he's kind of like this rock star. That they're reading about, like, oh, like subconsciously they're probably looking at this guy as a real life James Dean, or like a real life like, you know, hero movie figure at that during like the 60s or whatever, 70s, 60s, 60s, 70s. So like the police officers, despite like the fact that he's been murdering like other police officers, like they're oddly like receptive and warm to him when he's going away, because he's super charismatic too, which helps. But I see like them kind of I see him having that sort of rock star persona to him.
There's also like the aspect of like, and I don't know how police like arrested criminals in the 70s or the 50s or whenever this movie took place, but when they finally catch him, like, put the cuffs on yourself. There's like this weird,
and, like it's in the front too. Like,
there's like this weird like I understand they had like guns trained on him and he had given himself up at that point. He shot his car wheel. Spoilers, I guess, to the end. But like there's a still sense of like power like exuded. Like he's like, you can cuff yourself. Like it's almost like, hey, you've earned this almost. Like you've earned the respect of bringing yourself in. Like we're recognizing that you are giving yourself up. It's a very like interesting, like Kid is such a fascinating figure to me, because we also see like when they eventually run away, they build like a treehouse and it has like elaborate traps and like designs and backups for backups. And you're like, who is this person? Because then like glimpse like, is that because he has that one trap where he's underneath like the tunnel, or he's underneath like the brush. They do something similar in the
It's very
movie
guerrilla style.
The Foreigner with Jackie Chan. In 2017, there's a similar thing with that. But it's just like he's such a fascinating figure, and how he like very like nonchalantly kills people, and like the non-caring attitude about violence and murder is very fascinating too. But
Yeah.
I feel like we should come back, bring it back to the beginning of the movie. Mark, can you like set up what happens? Because we barely touched on Sissy Spacek at all in her role in the movie.
Right. Yeah, right. So the film starts out, again, it's like around 1958, and we see, I believe it starts out with Sissy Spacek's narration of Holly, and it's sort of, I don't know it verbatim, but it said like, who knew that, this girl from South Dakota, would end up in this crazy story that finished out in the Badlands or something like that, something along those lines. So it's established from the beginning. This is we're looking at this story through the lens of this teenager, and then we like sort of cut to Kit, and Kit's doing his garbage man job, and he leaves his job for the day, and he runs into Holly. It's a baton sort of routine.
I think it's like a tumbler or something like that.
Tumbler, and
I think that's what it's called.
yeah. And I believe Kit is 25 in this in the story, and Holly is 15.
Yep.
And I guess they fall in love. The father,
fall in love.
Yeah, they fall in love, or more, it's like Stockholm syndrome, I guess.
Didn't Holly say in the narration that it's like platonic?
Well, she says she's like I liked being with Kit, but I was also scared he was gonna like kill me if I left. Kind of.
I could have sworn there's a line where he said he never wanted to kiss me or something.
Is there?
I don't think.
I thought they have like intimate moments. No, because they do. They do because
okay. So maybe that was at the beginning. Maybe I'm pretty sure at the beginning that was a thing that was established.
Yeah.
But maybe like as it goes on, yeah.
I think it changes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so eventually they go on the run. And Kit kills Holly's father, and I want to talk about that scene very briefly. The confrontation between Holly's father and Kit killing Holly's father. When I first watched it, I thought it was a bit cheesy, because like Kit shoots the father and he just sort of dies instantly, right? And there's very little blood. And I was like, it sort of pulled me out of the movie a little bit. I was like, wait, shouldn't this be a little bit like more bloody or whatever, or like a little more dramatic? And then I realized it's being, on the second watch, it's like, this is told through the eyes of, like a 15-year-old girl. It's toned down because it's obviously a traumatic experience for her.
Yeah.
And, remembering that during my rewatch, it helped me keep that in mind for the rest of the film. Like, I'm seeing this through the eyes of a 15-year-old girl, and obviously she's going to maybe exaggerate, Kit's coolness or whatever, or some events may not be as they seem because, she has this misconstrued version of reality.
Yeah.
And so, going from that scene with the father dying, they go on the run, and it all ends up in the Badlands of, America.
Yeah. There's this definite, like, my favorite part of this movie, and I don't want to jump the gun immediately, is like the fact that this movie is based like a fairy tale. And that's a combination of like the fact that it is told from a younger perspective, that there is almost like storybook narration for Sissy Spacek, even points. And this is one of my criticisms of the movie, is I think the narration works at points. I think it doesn't work at other points, but I understand the point of it. It's like, hey, it's a storybook narration. It's why she will often just talk about like, and then we stop to go get water at one of these things, or we stop to go get gas, like telling the audience what we're seeing. There's a point for it, but like combine that with like the visuals, which are like this like red and green and almost kind of like magical kind of like style, and then tie that with like a very fascinating and almost like incredible score. That's like, it feels almost like magical and like fairy tale-esque. It's a very like interesting combination. That my favorite part of this movie is like the fact that it doesn't necessarily feel real. For some reason, it just feels like we're like watching like a story, and we're watching like an actual like fairy tale. And I was drawn anytime like the score comes in. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is a kick-ass movie.
Do you have any thoughts, Matt?
Yeah. Okay. I would say I agree with Tyler with the fairy tale elements, especially when they're out in nature. Like, it just seems like larger than life kind of in a lot of ways, like with all like the sweeping landscapes, especially in the Badlands, but also like in their little tree fort. and whatever. I also like going back to like the death of the father scene, like when they set the house on fire, and it's like they're burnt. It's like the metaphorical burning away for childhood protection, because like there's all these close-ups on like all like the dolls being burned, and like her like bedroom is like very. I think it's
a dollhouse burns in the house too.
Yeah, dollhouse burns.
Oh my god, the iceberg!
But I really like that stuff as well. It's that, and it's like a western too. I was so like I kept thinking his name was Kid. I think I thought like KID.
Yeah.
So I kept like comparing his tale to like Billy the Kid, like the real life historical figure, and like he was also like a murderer, an outlaw. But as time went on, like his reputation sort of preceded himself, and like a lot of locals started to like him. And started to think of him as some sort of like legendary figure while he was still alive. And they both, I mean, Billy the Kid, the real Billy the Kid, was shot by the police and killed, but like they're both taken by the police, both hunted down by the police at a young age, and then eventually caught and then both killed. But I don't know, the comparisons to that I think are valid as well.
Mark, what are your thoughts? So, Mark, you're the biggest proponent of this movie. Like, what are your favorite strengths? Like, I think it goes like you're the best. This is your favorite, or you're more high on this movie than it's me and it's Matt in some capacity. And we'll get to maybe some things that we had some flaws with. But Mark, like, what stands out to you about this movie?
The kit and the score. Those are like my two standouts, as well as Malik's phenomenal directing. I loved all of his nature shots. Like before I want to talk about this just because it came to my mind real quick. Let's talk about Nomadland for a second.
Yeah.
And the way Nomadland was shot.
That sucks.
How Nomadland was shot in the same location, and you can see the difference. I mean, they're two different stories. Obviously, they're going to be shot differently, but you gain a better sort of appreciation for the Badlands, or the American West Southwest in Badlands as opposed to Nomadland. Maybe that's why I wasn't so hot on Nomadland. Maybe because like that's sort of like personally, like I love seeing those like nature shots, and maybe I was putting that too high of an expectation on Nomadland because of that. But I'm interested to see what you guys think about the comparison between the nature shots in the two movies.
I mean, we're in a pretty similar like 3 weeks of movies without even realizing it. Like thematically, like Nomadland, Minari, and Badlands all kind of have like similar themes in some capacity. So that's our mini week, mini project right there. The American dream ish.
Lack thereof.
The lack thereof. I just think they're focusing on two completely different things. I mean the nature shots are like in Malik's movie and in Badlands, they're used to enhance like a fairy tale aspect. And in Nomadland, they're used to like in collaboration, like the beauty of nature, but tied into like the closeness of humanity and the closeness of people. And despite the fact that we're in these vast, empty environments, we still find connections in relationships with people and even with nature in a certain sense, despite these like vast and seemingly broad but beautiful and almost like threatening in a sense. Like a lot of Nomadland's nature shots are shot from almost like the mountains are like imposing over like the camera, and they seem almost threatening and daunting, but there's still like beauty in them, and there's beauty like beneath them too. And I think in Badlands are just used to like enhance like the fairy tale aspect of it, almost like a character in and of itself.
I think now that I'm thinking about it now is like Nomadland, the shots of nature imply like there's more to explore. Like think of the last shot where she's looking out her old kitchen window. She looks out into like the flat plains and then the big land or the big mountain.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to go there, as opposed to like Badlands where it's like, there's the mountain there. Over there's the mountains, here are the plains, and I'm in my place as a human being, or I'm an animal in nature. But I know that I recognize that they're two different subjects. I love what Terrence Malick did in Badlands so much, and I think I put that bias on Nomadland, and my rating for the film suffered because of it.
Well, you're stupid.
But Matt hasn't spoken yet. I want to hear Matt's thoughts
On what?
Oh my God! What were we just talking about? What were we just talking about?
Badlands. Do you have any thoughts on that?
The comparison between Nomadland and
No, well,
the way
like
the nature is shot.
Ago.
wait, what?
All right, okay, whatever. I'm gonna keep going on what do I like about the movie. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Matt just tuned us out for the past like 4 minutes.
I just heard Nomad. Like I started talking about Nomadland. I was like, I don't care anymore.
Wow. All right. Anyway, so one of the other aspects of the film that I love is the score. I love the score. I think I'm an absolute sucker when you get just that combination of just a great score and just a mesmerizing scene. So what comes to mind when I think of, that aspect of a film is the end of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, when the orchestra cues.
Yeah.
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 Silence of the Lambs with Hannibal Lecter's, he's like beating that guy up with the nightstick, and it's like almost like he's playing a symphony.
Yeah.
And then Blue Velvet.
I hadn't noticed that. I didn't notice that. Oh my god.
Yeah, and then
I have
and this
to rewatch
film.
Silence of the Lambs now again. I just
Didn't
rewatched
you
it.
just watch it?
I just rewatched it.
And wow, he has to watch it for just that one moment. Not the whole movie, not just the scene.
He'll sit him and clap during that scene.
In this film, the score playing throughout just enriches it everywhere. But specifically the scene where they're in that treehouse part of the story, and they have the little radio on the floor of the forest, and they're just sort of dancing, just very quaintly.
Yep.
It's just it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just mesmerizing, and you can't take your eyes off. And then the part where they're in the middle of the Badlands, in the middle of the night, and they're like slow dancing.
Yeah,
it
I
looks
was
like
gonna say that scene with the
they're in
score is like my
space
favorite.
almost.
Yeah.
It's miraculous.
There's also there's a very cool shot when they're in the treehouse where because you only see looking into the forest, and then it turns around to when they get water and you see the road 100 feet that way.
Right.
It's this very interesting whoa, that's kind of that's a nice kind of reveal oh, that's how they find people, or that's how they get caught, because they're not actually in the woods, because they're not actually, it's more it's pretend, they're playing, it's a story, it's a fairy tale, they're playing escape kind of fantasy in the woods, when actuality there's the reality, people are driving by and they can see what's happening there. I'm still thinking about, honestly, I'm still thinking about the fact that I'm thinking about that shot now, and I'm
The Silence of the Lambs.
The Silence of the Lambs. Now I'm just thinking about that again.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm Matt, what'd you think about the score in this movie? Because I think the score
I was gonna point out specifically the scene when they're in that night and they're dancing in the headlights of the car. That's when it stood out to me the most. But it was just quality all around. I would have to listen to the soundtrack on my own to really get an appreciation of it. So I can't really comment too much on it. But I would say it was most prevalent to me during that one scene specifically.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Tyler?
I don't know. I think there's a definite
There wasn't enough. What's that guy's name from One Direction?
Harry Styles?
Yeah, Harry Styles.
What?
It's Tyler's I want more Harry Styles.
I want more Harry Styles.
Go watch Dunkirk.
I don't I hate both of you. I think I'm the lowest on Dunkirk out of all of you.
Which is funny because you made us watch it.
I did make you watch it. I was gonna say that I keep thinking about the fairy tale aspect now, and more scenes come up when they're thinking we're gonna hop on the train, and they're we can do it, and there's this moment where you're oh yeah, and move as you hop on the train, and the thing goes speeding by, and they kind of stop and look at it, and they're oh, we could have done it. But you're no, there's no way you're getting on that train. I like the subversion of hey, look at the fairy tale aspect, and I mean there's more aspects of it where it's they're constantly driving through the nature, and there's never Sissy Spacek, which we still haven't talked about her character, by the way. She's never she never talks about the hardships that much. Their big struggle is where do we go? What direction do we head in? There's this very
she says she wanted to drown him a couple times.
Yeah, she's just
but other than that, not really.
Yeah, she's just bored. She's just eventually the appeal and the initial spark of endorphins that started this whole thing. When you're just driving in nature and you're with someone, then you kind of realize you're okay, this is who this person is, and then she gets bored, and then she's
she gets turned off by the violence pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, she's
things like that. She's definitely more passive. But yeah, you can definitely, she feels very realistic because as time goes on, she kind of the illusion that this guy, the illusion of this Hollywood man that that Kit thinks he is slowly going away.
Yeah, when
I have.
Sorry, I was gonna say when the sheen of he doesn't know what he's doing anymore, he's not on top of things, is gone. Yeah, sorry. Okay, now keep going.
So this is gonna sound like a weird question, and through our discussion, this has sort of been provoked in my head, and I've been mulling it over. Do you think that Kit actually cares for Holly, or Holly is just a vessel to get him to fame and stardom, sort of? Because I'm thinking about the specific scene where the moment we see true passion from Kit is when Holly's I don't want to go with you. I don't want to go. when the helicopter comes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he's
Well,
like, meet me here. He's like, what? And he's like kicking the dirt and he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty clear that she's just a vessel. At least that's what I took from it.
I think I agree with Tyler. I think it's mostly when he says like, "Oh, I just want like when I'm dying, I want a girl to like be sad for me,
Yeah.
like when I'm being shot down by the police, like Bonnie and Clyde style." I don't know. That's kind of like how I see it. Is
There's a reason he picked a young, kind of like doe-eyed, like innocent girl, like kind of like naive in a sense. Naive, not in a negative connotation. Naive is like how they present her in the movie.
Right.
There's a reason I think that he picks her, and that it's because it is like it's an abusive relationship, but not in like the typical sense of how we think of abuse. It's I think someone said Stockholm syndrome kind of earlier.
I said that.
You said that, and I think it kind of relates to that. I don't think he has any like any like care for
Legitimate.
Holly. Yeah, legitimate outside of because like I think you said earlier, Mark, like the only time he shows like real emotion is when he's captured at the end. And his legacy has been cemented as the James Dean, suave, cool, like charming criminal. Like that's it. Like he got what he wanted. He didn't. And then you're right. Well, because in his mind, he realizes when he's like escaping the helicopter, he shoots the one cop, and Holly's like, "I'm gonna leave." He still believes he has a chance to get away, and it's why when she does leave or break away, he's so mad because his story isn't over to him. At least he needs her to like fulfill his legacy, and she's done. That's why he gets mad. I thought it was like I never watched this from a sense of like they cared about each other. I watched this from a sense of like she's just his vessel to gain.
Well,
fame.
let's talk about after Kid is caught and when
Okay.
he goes to talk to Holly and he says like, I killed your father. We should probably talk about that sometime. I mean, he does care about her in a sense, but the thought of killing her father doesn't really like the importance of it doesn't really strike him until after his fame is cemented.
Yeah, I don't like. There's this like weird like sense of like desensitizing violence throughout the start. I mean, Holly's father kills her dog at the beginning of the movie, and there's like no mention of that, and that's even before she like runs away with Kit. Like she's like, oh yeah, he killed my dog, and now he makes me play piano, and if I don't like piano, he's gonna make me do like the clarinet, and like there's this like weird like through line theme of like the lack of care about violence. And to me, like at the end, like Kid has gotten captured. Like, what's cooler than like a final line with like the girl, like, hey, like I had an impact on you, didn't I? Kind of thing. Like you, like I mean something to you. Like to me,
Yeah.
it all just like plays into like his fantasy aspect of it. I never got the sense of like a relationship at all between them, and I don't think you're supposed to. Or are you? This is what's great about the movie. This is what's awesome about it.
Well, yeah, I think when I first watched it, the thought of it being sort of a Stockholm syndrome relationship, it was there at the beginning, but as time went on, I was like, I was sort of in a way convinced that they were like, they'd completely fallen for each other or whatever. But on this rewatch, and now that I'm thinking it over, it's like just thinking about when does Kit show emotion? When Holly says, "I'm not going with you," and when the police officer says, "You look like James Dean," those are the only times he's broken the stoic facade over his face.
Yeah.
He's also, I would say he's like just more relaxed when he's finally arrested and he's like talking to all the cops around him and pawning off all this stuff. He just seems very like he's not stoic. He's just kind of like relaxed and like it looks he's like having a good time. Which is interesting.
Stoic before up until that point, before he starts showing emotion, he's stoic, I would say.
Yeah, no, I would say he's stoic. Yeah, up to that point.
But he's relaxed after he gets caught. I agree with you with that.
There's also the sense of like I think he shows emotion in one more thing, and it's when he goes to spin the bottle in the dirt because he doesn't know what direction he's going to, and it's not really like a lot of emotion. It's more like brief frustration because his journey to like fame and infamy is on hold because they're kind of like they're aimless at this point. Like they're just in the middle of like the plains, and like how are you gonna gain notoriety if you can't do things that are notorious? And he's been stuck in the plains for days at that point. I'm pretty sure, and I think it's like a very just. To me, this movie's like so fascinating, and I don't because when we eventually get to like grades and stuff like that, I do want to talk about some like slight issues I have with the movie, and this I think will give you a chance.
You want to get into problems or?
Yeah, like none of my
Let's do
problems
it.
are major. Matt, you are the lowest in this movie. What did you have some issues with?
I would say like the middle. I was sort of not interested in. I not. I mean, that's like kind of over exaggerating, but I would say like when he's in the mansion with the rich guy. It just kind of. I mean, like you could grasp things from it, like what Tyler said about him appreciating like the rich man's lifestyle. but I didn't think it was like as interesting as when he's out in the wilderness, like trying to survive that way. I would say so. Like I like the death where he visits his friend and then the friend runs and he assumes that he's gonna go run to like call the police or whatever and shoots him and he gets up and then he opens the door for him as he
Yeah.
goes inside. That was funny. But like when they meet those other two people that come in and he like you can argue like, oh, it's filmed this way for a certain reason, but just like it was so like it felt kind of amateurish when he locks the gate, the shed thing, and then it shoots twice. He goes, I think I got him, and like just like the action itself felt very awkward and a little dated to me. You could like excuse it in certain ways, but like I don't know, it's like I don't understand why he didn't want to see if they were dead or not. Like it seemed like he clearly doesn't shy away from violence. Like why would he not check to see?
I think it's the thrill of it.
Yeah, I don't know. It just like the body language of it was really weird to me.
Yeah.
I did not get that impression at all.
Like, I think I got him. Like I don't know. That was just so. I don't know. It just seems. Really
It's. I think it's odd. It's definitely odd, but I think it only enriches Kit's character because I think when you juxtapose that with the rich man and the maid,
yeah,
that really gets the brain juices flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting because you could write like a whole paper like on a film class about how he treats certain people different ways.
Yep.
Right.
But
based on like class and gender, it's a very interesting. I don't know. Like for me, I think I said before, some of the narration works, and I think some of the narration doesn't work. I get the point of it, but I'm a big like proponent of just show me, don't tell me. And when there are multiple scenes of her like Sissy Spacek like narrating like what the actual actions are they doing, it's not a big criticism, but it happens like 4 or 5 times in the movie, and each time it's just like telling them about their journey, and then Kit and I went and did this, and I just would have rather just not tell me because I
keep me in mind, this is the guy who didn't realize that Hannibal Lecter was waving the baton like an orchestral.
It's still like, hey, it's really cool. I must say, I've seen that movie 3 times now. It's awesome. I want to watch it again.
I disagree with you, Tyler. I think. Well, I don't want to continue. I don't want to discontinue your.
No, because my other thing is like I do think the movie has like some like occasional pacing issues. But it's also like pacing issues in the sense that I also wanted like 15 more minutes of a movie. It's weird. Like I wanted a little more, and I think I wanted a little more exploration into like the wilderness of it, like in like actually in the Badlands, because once they get out to the wilderness and out to base like nothing, it's kind of over. Like the movie's kind of over by that point. I would have loved to like that's like one of the things is like what we got is really good, but I wanted to see more is like a weird criticism.
What would have been more for you? What would you have wanted?
I would have loved to see more after they leave the rich man's house, where they take his Cadillac and they drive through. I would have loved to see more like dialogue between the two, I guess, and less narration.
Well, I think I disagree. I don't think we need any more dialogue. I think it's sort of staged at that point that there's a clear divide between the two of them. Yeah. And it's only cemented by Holly's narration and their body language. Like think in the car where Kit is just like, rambling on about something. And then like Holly's like reading the paper and she's like, did you say something?
Yeah.
That's a great instance of show, don't tell, I guess. But she's also narrating during that time period, I guess. But I think, and also I want to touch on the pacing issues aspect. There's definitely different levels of pacing in this film. I don't think they're an issue though. I think a case can be made for like, does the rich man detour need to be in the film? I guess you can sort of make a case for that because it sort of sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb. Yep. But for me, it doesn't bother me. I think you learn so much more about Kit, and since Kit is just so interesting, if Kit wasn't interesting, I'd have a problem with the scene or this sequence. But I think for me, it's just the perfect length, and there is the different pacing but I think it's fine. I think it's fine, and I think what we have is excellent, basically.
But it's also like I guess my final thing is like it comes with like a slight criticism is that comes on like first rewatch or first watches of a movie is the limitations of first watches. This is clearly a movie that has to be watched more than once to fully appreciate, and I'm seeing it for my first time. So because of that, I'm going to watch it again. I can tell you that for certain, and I will probably end up liking it a lot more than I do now.
I just want to ask Mark, did you like it more your second viewing or?
Oh yes,
absolutely. Like did you go up like a whole grade level or like where are you?
I went from like this is an A to this is a solid A.
Okay.
And I think what really opened for me on the second watch is how many lenses you can watch this movie from. Like you can watch this and focus on Polly, or you could watch this and focus on Kit, or you can watch this and focus on who's getting murdered, you know,
Yeah.
or like how people are, how people's like, you know, reactions to, you know, Kit are, and like, you know, his interactions with the world. And I think it's fascinating. I think that's what makes a great film, or, you know, even like a, you know, when books do that, where you can apply different lenses to it, it's so enriching. So that's why I think this film is just a knockout.
I'm
As I'm
like,
thinking about it, I kind of wonder if like Taylor Sheridan was inspired by Badlands at all.
probably was. Oh yeah.
Because like when you look at his
Sure.
movies, it's a lot of like people living in like rough environments in America.
Yeah.
So like I kind of want to see if like any Taylor Sheridan interviews, he's like, oh, Badlands is an inspiration for me, because you can definitely see some very similar themes.
I imagine. I mean, this is a massive movie. I mean, this is like it's regarded as, like Mark said at the beginning, it's one of the best movies of the '70s. That and Days of Heaven are, and I'm super curious to check out Days of Heaven too now.
Also, like, think about this period of like, I mean, I don't know if we can classify Badlands as Hollywood. Maybe it is, because, you know, there's sort of that James Dean aspect to it. But like, think about the '70s. We got the year before this, we got The Godfather.
Yeah.
And then we got this film and The Godfather Part 2, and then Chinatown, and then One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
And then you get The Deer Hunter, Apocalypse Now. Like the '70s were just insane.
The '70s are
Yeah.
probably the best decade of movies.
There were like a lot of crazy, like Apocalypse Now is such a crazy big movie, but without CGI, and it's like so impressive. Like, yeah, just like a lot of filmmakers like being really experimental. It's great.
It's like the first era of like film school generation.
Yeah.
Spielberg, Scorsese, Coppola, you know,
the movie brats.
and the movie brats. So do you guys have anything else to add?
I'm with Sarah. Go, Matt.
I said everything.
Same with me.
Yeah, I think we should just get to grades then, right?
All right. We're gonna get to grades now. We grade stuff on an A, B, C, D, F scale, and they're plus or minuses. Except now we basically do highs and lows, which is plus or minuses. So whatever. Who gives a shit anymore? Matt, why don't you take away? Give us a quick, brief summary of your grade, and then why you give it that grade.
I'm gonna give it a solid B, with the asterisk that I probably like it a lot more in the second viewing. It definitely has interest. I've seen movies, like I've seen kind of worried, because when I saw Minari and Nomadland, I was like my criticisms were that they were boring and slow.
Yeah.
It's like, am I like just losing my like taste in film?
Yeah.
So like, I'm glad I watched a slower movie that I liked again. It kind of revalidates my you know, film opinions.
Yeah.
Do you hear people yelling upstairs? That's what I hear. I heard people yelling behind me.
No.
You guys
I don't
got
hear
quiet,
anything.
and as soon as people upstairs started yelling, and I was like, oh, okay.
I'm sure it's fine. And like I would say like this might be like this side of paradise of Terrence Malick, where it's like there's potential here, but when I see his later stuff, I'll see like, oh, this is why this person's such like a well-known
Clarify what
filmmaker.
this side of paradise is.
What?
Clarify what this side.
Oh, The Side of Paradise is the first novel by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it's good, but like there's highs. It reaches really good highs, but like I think like I said, Terrence Malick, like directorial wise, it reaches highs. I'd say at its highest like in the last third. And I would say like I would probably, if more of his movies are like that style, then I would say I would probably enjoy his other movies when I eventually get to watch them. But yeah, so I'm gonna say solid B, with the asterisk that I would probably like it more once I like. When I focus less on the plot and more on like the characters.
Yeah. I think you
Mark,
would definitely get a lot out of Days of Heaven. Because thematically, the location, it's two different stories, but it's like you could watch that, not know who the director was, and you'd be like, yep, that's Terrence Malick, even though you've only seen Badlands.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
It's evident. And so, Tyler, you want to go?
Yeah, you go. Sorry, people got really loud upstairs, like to the point like I could hear what people were saying, so I muted them.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's why I said wait, hold on, and then yeah. So
gotcha.
Mark, what do you get for a grade? Give a brief explanation.
I'm gonna give it an A. I think there's just so many layers to this film. Again, we talked about the iceberg theory, Hemingway's theory. A second watch of the film makes it even more incredible, and I think this discussion has also illuminated different aspects of the film that I was ignorant to. And this is definitely a film I'll watch over and over again. So I just have to give it an A.
This discussion has actually been very great.
We got a fourth film fraud.
Yeah.
Matt's on mute.
Matt's on mute. I'm actually this discussion has very much helped. I'm actually gonna give this like a low A.
Okay.
This is a very fascinating movie, and the more we talked about it, and the more we explored different kind of layers and themes and different interpretations of it, the more it makes me want to rewatch this movie. And I think I've said plenty of times before, but I'm someone who very much like places a lot of value on, do I want to go back and revisit a movie? And if a movie makes me want to do that, I'm gonna favor it higher. And I think this is one. It like immediately made Malik like a must-watch director now. Like I have to check out his other movies, and I'm just very
same for me.
Same for you, yeah. I'm very fascinated by just like the ideas in this movie and doing more research on it and seeing how people interpret this. It's just one of those movies that I think is going to be, like both you guys have been saying, it's just going to be better on rewatches for me. And it's one
Right.
that could go from like a low A, like a low A, to like a genuine just A movie for me.
Mhm.
Yeah. Awesome. You guys have any
sweet.
final points?
Yeah, I think if you got through this discussion, go watch Days of Heaven, because I think I'll probably recommend that one next, because I think
All right.
Terrence Malick makes a great conversation.
I think he does too. All right, guys. Matt, what's our call to action? What are we doing next week? I actually don't even know what we're doing next week.
Dog Day Afternoon.
No,
March.
wait, no, we aren't. Wait, are we? Or is next
Yeah.
week Justice League?
Next week is Justice League.
Wait, hold on. Wait.
No. Dog Day Afternoon, please.
Wait.
Please, I beg you.
We've all agreed that we have to Justice League if it comes out.
It's 4 hours and 2 minutes. Oh, March 18th. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
So we got another
God.
week.
Ooh.
Okay, so next week, Mark's director's choice. Sydney
Lumet.
Dog Day Afternoon. Very exciting for that. I haven't seen the movie, so
I haven't seen it. None of us have seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it either?
I haven't
Mark?
seen
Nope.
it either.
Interesting. Okay, so blind watch for all of us.
Yep.
If it's anything like 12 Angry Men, it'll probably be excellent.
Yeah.
Or Network.
I haven't seen Network yet, so
yeah.
Get to that.
It's Pacino.
But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, comment, feel from fraud as long as me. Tyler officially got his first vote last week.
I think we're all tied at
The
one
most
now.
pity
We're
vote I've
watching.
ever
We're
heard.
watching you, French ass mutiny. We're
Yeah,
watching.
Franchise Mutiny, you betrayed us. We have a really great I've been watching episode that Tyler refuses to upload, but hopefully maybe
That's
this
fine.
week it'll be out.
Matt, we can put it on your channel. How about that?
No, it's in the Film Frost
Yeah.
channel.
No. Well,
Yeah.
I'll put it out eventually. Do we want to officially shout out individual channels or keep it
No, let's just keep it.
Yeah,
Keep
it's
going.
secret for right now.
a secret? You'll find them eventually. Well,
Something's in the works. We're working on something.
Mark's
Yeah.
already famous, so you know.
yeah.
Mark's already really cool. All right, that works for us. We'll see you guys next week with Dog. What is it?
Dog
again?
Day Afternoon.
Dog Day. I was gonna say Dog Afternoon. And I'm gonna go and rewatch Silence of the Lambs. Get that all over again
For one scene.
for one scene. All right, guys. Thank you for watching, and I got the final word. Goodbye.